Hi guys, it's Michelle and today's video is going to be all about the passing of Amy Winehouse. I asked you guys on here in a poll if you wanted to see this video and it was overwhelming yes. So I figured I would do that because I think that a lot of people don't really know what happened to Amy Winehouse. Like when I talk to most people, they get very surprised that she didn't pass away from a drug overdose, which I don't know why so many people thought that that was the case. But we're going to be talking about her life and her death and what happened and the conspiracies surrounding it that I think are dumb. So let's get into it. But I just want to remind you guys that this week until Christmas, I'm going to be doing like a Vlogmas thing, true crime cases, conspiracy theories, etc. So make sure you come back every day or, you know, click the notification bell or whatever so that you don't miss an upload. But yeah, let's get into it. So Amy Winehouse was born on September the 14th, 1983 in Southgate, London. I would say Amy had quite a bit of trouble growing up. She was a bit of a mischievous child. Amy's parents, Mitch and Janice Winehouse, actually split up when Amy was about 9 years old. This kind of was hard for her. She had a hard time going back and forth, you know, from her mom's house to her dad's house, just like, you know, any kid with divorced parents probably had. Amy ended up struggling with a lot of depression as a teenager. She also had eating disorders throughout her entire life, pretty much. She struggled with bulimia when she was growing up, and her parents didn't really see this. I don't know if they didn't see it as an issue, but they just didn't, you know, it wasn't treated the same way. Mental illness was not treated the same way as it is now in the, you know, 80s and 90s, which is unfortunate, obviously. But a lot of people talk about that from the Amy Winehouse documentary that was very popular, that I have a lot of beef with. But a lot of people talk about that and like they blame her parents for pretty much everything, which I mean, I think that everyone around her was somewhat to blame, but you know, for this particular thing, like it was just a different time where people didn't talk about those kind of things. Like it was just like, oh, there's just being a teenager. Like that's just like, it was just written off, mental illness, honestly, which is really, really messed up, but it kind of was just the way that it was. So Amy ended up attending theater schools because her family started to notice that she had quite a bit of talent on her hands. Mostly the recommendation of Amy's grandmother, Cynthia, who Amy loved dearly. She even had like a Cynthia tattoo just for her grandma, and that's her paternal grandma, so it's her dad's mom. She also wasn't even sure she wanted to be a singer. Like she knew she loved singing and like wanted to be a performer, but she didn't know that was like a job, I guess. She actually really wanted to be a roller skating waitress, like one of those waitresses that wear roller skates. Why did I just explain the most self-explanatory thing on the actual planet? I don't know. It really wasn't that shocking that Amy was such a talent when it came to music because she was raised with, you know, music through her veins, specifically jazz music. Her father, his mother loved jazz music, and it was just kind of ingrained in her to be a jazz singer. One of the most detrimental things to Amy Winehouse's like mental health and everything that happened with Amy was that she was kind of launched into stardom, and it was very slow but then also very quick at the same time, and I just think that it would be overwhelming for anybody. So Amy used to perform at local jazz clubs in London, and she ended up like obtaining quite a big audience like of people who would regularly go to specifically see her sing. So one of Amy's singer friends named Tyler James ended up sending Amy's demo tape to an A&R person who's basically someone who scouts out talent for different, you know, record labels and such. And they loved it, obviously, because Amy was just so talented and they wanted to sign her. And in 2002, she actually did end up signing with Simon Fuller's 19 Management record label, and she was paid £250 a week. And it was interesting because they kind of kept Amy under wraps by this record company because they wanted to like kind of, you know, develop her image and her music taste and her style, like what they wanted her to like be basically. But they knew that she was such a talent that she was gonna get like picked up by anybody very easily. They wanted to definitely keep Amy to themselves, so that's what they did. However, one of the managers of a band in the UK decided to show this A&R person from Island Records this tape of these people singing, and Amy was like the lead singer on the record. And the guy was like, who is this? Like, I need to know who is singing on this record. Like, she's incredible, blah, blah, blah. And the manager wouldn't tell him who it was. He was like, I can't, I'm sorry, like it's, you know, they're keeping her under wraps. And so he spent the next 2 months trying to find out who the singer on the record was. And once he discovered that it was Amy Winehouse, he immediately had to meet her. So of course he then got Amy to sign to Island Records, and this was definitely the launch point, or at least the beginning of the launch point for Amy's career. And by October 20th of 2003, Amy's first record, Frank, was released in the UK, and it was a pretty big success and people absolutely loved it. This was when Amy really started to get into the Camden nightlife, which I think was again kind of another turning point for Amy. 2004, early 2005, I think it was February 2005, I'm not actually sure because I have heard different people say different things about when Amy and Blake met, but I'm pretty sure it was actually 2005. Amy Winehouse met, you know, someone who would be a huge part of her life, to say the least, Blake Fielder Civil. You probably have heard of him if you know anything about Amy Winehouse. A lot of people hate him, and we're gonna talk about that and why, but she met him at the Good Mixer pub in Camden. I actually went to this pub. It was really weird to like feel that. I went to like a bunch of different like Amy Winehouse related places when I was in London in 2019, and it was interesting. It was really surreal, honestly. But anyway, so the Good Mixer Club is where Blake and Amy met for the first time, and they were instantly like that infatuated with each other, obsessed with each other, even though Blake did actually have a girlfriend at the time. When Amy and Blake met, Amy was actually super anti-drugs, at least hard drugs. She used to go on stage being like, Class A drugs are for mugs. She didn't understand why people did Class A drugs. She just didn't think that she would ever get into it. She did smoke weed, which is, you know, fine, obviously. But at the time when she met Blake, she did not do drugs. However, Blake was a drug addict. And once he broke it off with his girlfriend that he was dating when he met Amy, him and Amy basically became inseparable and started seriously dating each other. So Amy and Blake were together for 6 months before they ended their relationship. Blake actually went back to his ex-girlfriend, which you might get the lyric, you go back to her and I go back to black song, but we're gonna talk about that later too. This was another big point in Amy's life when Blake broke up with Amy for the first time and went back to his ex-girlfriend. Amy ended up getting really into the Camden nightlife. She would go out and drink so much. This is when alcohol really became an issue for Amy, and she would go out and drink and stay out all night, like wake up not knowing where she was because she had gotten so drunk, and it was just not good. Her friends and family were really concerned. So Amy was drunk one night and she hit her head, and this is when her old, like her first manager ever, like when they were like basically just her friend, Nick, decided to step in and say that Amy needed to go to rehab. So Nick ended up calling Amy's dad and, you know, bringing him over to explain like how Amy hit her head and fell, and basically that he felt like Amy needed help. And Mitch Winehouse, Amy's father, was a bit, I would say Amy kind of sweet talked him and kind of said like, no, Dad, I promise, like I don't need to go to rehab. I'm fine. I'm just sad because I'm, you know, I had my heart broken. And that's when Mitch at that point said that Amy did not need to go to rehab. This is what the Amy documentary annoyed the shit out of me, is because they took that and made it seem like Mitch Winehouse said that Amy never needed to go to rehab, which was obviously not the case. I can't even say obviously because I feel like a lot of people don't even know that. A lot of people aren't aware that Amy Winehouse went to rehab several times, which we will talk about. It was very frustrating to see them kind of try on purpose to paint her father as, you know, this bad person, which I'm not saying that he is a good person because I don't know him, but I'm just saying like he definitely did play a big part in helping Amy get to rehab at one point. He was just saying that at this point she didn't need to go to rehab. Do I disagree with him? Probably, but like I said, I wasn't there. This particular instance is actually where the song Rehab comes from. Like, and then my daddy thinks I'm fine. Like, he did say that she was fine at that point in time. But later on, of course, he did help her get help. Because she actually did, even at this point in time, even though her dad was like, I think you're fine, but you maybe should go to rehab, just to see what they say. Like maybe they'll say that you have a drinking problem, maybe, like, I don't know. So that's where I feel like her dad actually did kind of do the responsible thing, because he did kind of convince her to just go and try it out. So she walked into rehab and the guy said, why do you think you're here? And she said, I just went through a terrible breakup, so I always keep my bottle near. It's literally in the song. Rehab is word for word what happened. So if you want to listen to it, you can do that and then you would know exactly what happens. Basically the guy at the rehab facility said, I don't think that you're an alcoholic. I think you're depressed and going through something. And she said, great. And then she left. So that's what happened the first time Amy went to rehab. So Back to Black, the album as a whole, is pretty much only about Blake. Like every single song, all of her songs tell quite a literal story of her life. Like for example, in Back to Black, the lyric, "You love blow and I love puff," once again highlights that Blake was a drug addict and Amy loved puff, which is weed. So album that releasing October 30th of 2006 was a huge boost for Amy's career. This is when she crossed the pond. Everyone was talking about her in the UK, in the States, everywhere. Like this was when, you know, the beehive really settled in, the winged liner. She had like a signature look. And people wanted to know what was up with Amy Winehouse. In early 2007, Amy seemed to be doing better. She even had some really great boyfriends in between that were actually good guys for her. She just seemed to be doing better all around. However, February of 2007, she started dating Blake again, and this time things got really, you know, really bad between them. That timeline is a bit confusing, but I think it was after her and Blake got married that they started doing Class A drugs together. But nonetheless, they did go to Miami in May of 2007. On May 18th of 2007, they got married in Miami. Amy and Blake just began to absolutely spiral together. It's just horrible to watch, and horrible that the way the media treated Amy was ridiculous. Like, actually so fucked up. And I truly believe the media is a lot to blame for her death and for her, you know, spiral, because it's just so crazy the way that we treat people who do drugs and people who are drug addicts. It's messed up. It is an illness. It is a, you know, struggle that they're dealing with, and we should encourage them to get help and be kind to them and not treat them like they're nothing. And I just think the way that the media treated Amy Winehouse was absolutely disgusting, along with so many other people, so many other celebrities who dealt with drug addiction issues. It's just absolutely heartbreaking to have seen like people be treated like that. Demi Lovato, I think, gets treated terribly. Whitney Houston got treated terribly. Like, so just, I mean, there's not many people who are drug addicts that I feel like didn't get treated like shit. Amy and Blake were constantly photographed by paparazzi with, you know, cuts and bruises all over them and blood on like her ballet pumps. She would have cigarette burns on her face. She apparently like would, you know, get really high on crack cocaine and heroin. And Amy several times had lit a cigarette and like put it out on her skin. Just really sad, horrible things in regards to self-harm. Apparently Blake claims that he felt really guilty that he introduced her to these hard drugs, but also to self-harming, and like just really toxic relationship. Like, I don't know what other word to use. It was so heartbreaking to see, you know, the two of them just destroy their health. Like, it's really sad. And I think a lot of people obviously blame Blake as well for getting Amy into drugs, but I just don't think that's entirely fair to do, because he was also a drug addict, struggled himself. Like, of course, you know, he did, obviously. He was the one who introduced her to hard drugs like heroin and crack cocaine and really dangerous things. But I also feel like I said, he was also an addict. It's just, it's hard to put blame for like something like that. Ultimately, it was obviously Amy's decision to try the drugs. I don't feel comfortable putting blame on anybody for somebody's death, because I just think that's really detrimental and kind of unnecessary. Like, to an extent, yeah, but like, I guess you could blame literally everyone that was ever around her, because clearly everyone saw a problem, and that includes the media, because the media was posting that Amy Winehouse is a crackhead, or Amy Winehouse is gonna drink herself to death, Amy Winehouse is this and that, and like, yeah, so you all knew, everyone knew. In August of 2007, Amy was rushed to the hospital because she overdosed. Heroin, ketamine, cocaine, and ecstasy were all found in her system. She actually used to be kind of prone to seizures, so that's basically what happened. She started seizing, and then, of course, ambulance was called, and she ended up being okay. She had to get her stomach pumped. but this was when she did go to rehab. This was when kind of the turning point, especially because Blake was actually arrested for getting in a pub fight, like with the pub landlord. And then he actually bribed a witness to not show up to court, and that got him 2 years in jail. So he was in jail for 27 months. And this was when the family of Amy Winehouse and the friends of Amy Winehouse decided that they were going to use this as an opportunity to get Amy clean, because the two of them had gone to rehab together. It was kind of like a tumultuous year for them in 2007, because Amy and Blake wanted to go to rehab together, which wasn't really ideal because I don't think either of them were quite ready to get clean, and they certainly were not good for each other at that time. So it didn't end up really working. But once Blake was in jail, they decided that this would be a great time to try to get Amy clean, and that's what they did. She definitely did have a rough year in 2007 and 2008. She went to rehab. She spent a lot of time in St. Lucia with her family and friends, and she did end up getting herself clean. And she was clean off of drugs for the last 3 years of her life, which I feel like a lot of people don't know, because a lot of people think that she passed away from a drug overdose, which isn't true. She definitely turned her life around for the better and completely stopped doing hard drugs. In 2009, Blake actually filed for divorce once he got out of prison, and he didn't really want to divorce Amy, but everyone was telling him like, oh, you're bad for Amy, like this is terrible. And so they ended up divorcing. But the two were never really separated. Like they were kind of physically, but they would still talk to each other. And Blake actually like met somebody in rehab and like had a kid with her, 2 kids actually. Amy like would text him being like, it's okay, like we're gonna take these, like your kid, and we're gonna like raise him, like we're gonna be such good parents together. Like they were both just kind of delusional in the sense of how reality worked, because Amy, although she had stopped doing hard drugs, she kind of replaced one addiction with another, and that's when alcohol once again became quite a big problem for Amy. She would go through periods of being sober and being, going on a binge of alcohol. And this is a common pattern for anybody that's trying to, curb an addiction. It's obviously extremely hard. Around 2010 was probably the best time in Amy's life. We saw like she just seemed like she was really, really turning things around. She was back and forth in rehab and out of rehab for a bit during this time, but it was like all in good spirits. Like she seemed to be happier. She was dating a new guy named Reg Travis. She actually checked into rehab in May of 2011 in preparation for her world tour that she was supposed to go on. Started in Belgrade, and it was June 18th of 2011, and it was a disaster, to be honest. Like I don't know what else to call it. It was really, really, really hard to watch. Knowing what happened like a month later, and she just was completely drunk on stage, but like getting booed by everyone on stage. Like she just was not herself. It just was clear that she shouldn't have been touring, which was then when they made the decision to cancel the rest of her tour, and she flew home to London. This was when she actually got clean for quite a few weeks. She was not drinking because she actually thought that she was pregnant, according to her father, but she found out that she wasn't pregnant around, I would say, maybe a week before she passed away. And she started drinking again. Lived with a live-in bodyguard named Andrew, and her live-in bodyguard said that he noticed that she was drinking, but it wasn't like an excessive amount or anything, so he kind of just let her be. And on the night that she passed away, her bodyguard said that she was like listening to music, playing the drums, singing, and also watching YouTube videos of herself singing. And she like turned to him and said, I can really sing. And he was like, damn right you can. Like, which is just so sad to think that she was just like reflecting on her life. And then the next morning, on July 23rd of 2011, it was around 10 a.m. and her bodyguard went in to like look to see if she was like awake or whatever, and he noticed that she was like sleeping like on her stomach, but she like wasn't moving or anything, but he just thought she was sleeping, so he just, you know, was like, okay, she usually sleeps in after she drinks. But then at around 3 p.m. he noticed that Amy was in the exact same sleeping position, so he, you know, went to like actually like, you know, go up to her and check on her, and he noticed that she wasn't breathing, and of course called the ambulance, and she was pronounced dead like at her house in Camden. And the toxicology report reported that Amy had drank 5 times the like legal drink drive limit. There was 2 empty bottles of vodka in her room. Her parents ended up seeing her like body. Her dad said that her cheeks were flushed, which is something that would happen when Amy like had a seizure. So he thinks that she had a seizure, but like nobody was there to like help her. So she ended up just like passing away, like her heart just stopped. It's really, really sad and just such a tragic story. Amy Winehouse was laid to rest at the Edgwarebury Lane Cemetery in kind of London. It's actually very far from London. I went and it was like an hour and a half away. I think that a lot of people also blame the Illuminati, which a whole nother thing. People really take the fact that she was 27 because of the 27 Club. Also the fact that her neighbors heard drumming and like loud noises the night that she passed away, which a lot of people were like, it was a satanic ritual and they were killing Amy Winehouse and all this stuff. No, her bodyguard literally said that she was up late like singing and playing the drums, like playing music. Like she had a drum set in her house and everything, so I just don't think that that was the case. But yeah, it's kind of weird because I went to her house in Camden and it's just like weird to like have been there and like know that like she was there, and like the neighbors that like lived there might have lived there when she was there, which is just weird. Take this new year to stop judging people who have drug addictions or alcohol addictions. It should be treated like any other mental illness. They are not disgusting, they are not shit, they are not any less than you. But yeah, I also don't believe in the 27 Club. I've talked about this. I did a whole video on it and how I believe that it has to do with astrology, aka Saturn return. So check that out if you want. But yeah, other than that, that is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about Amy Winehouse's passing. Are there any other celebrity passings that you would want me to talk about? I would love to know. But that is it. And also remember, when you listen to Amy Winehouse's music now, and when you know, buy anything through the Amy Winehouse Foundation, the money is going to young people who cannot afford to go to rehab. So it is a great organization set up by her parents, and I seriously think it's actually really important. That is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram because I'm always posting really dope ass shit on there. Subscribe for new videos every week and every day right now for Vlogmas, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye!